Shalom, this is Rabbi Allen, and we are continuing with our weekly Torah portion, connecting Yeshua to the Torah portion. And so this week, our portion is Korach, and it's numbers 16:1 through 18:32. The corresponding Haftarah portion is 1 Samuel 11:14 through 12:22, but we're going to be talking about this morning about Korach. This week's portion is about rebellion and murmuring, and it's a topic from Korach that at least once a year I seem to have preached or taught about it at the congregation. And let me tell you that this portion and what is contained in it, it certainly concerns and affects me personally, and certainly when I was at the congregation, when I was leading the congregation as the rabbi of Kol Mashiach. So more about that in just a few minutes, but let's get into the portion here. So the reality is, if Israel had just believed Joshua and Caleb, as we read about last week with the spies, that Israel would be well on their way to the promised land. But because of the sin of the people not believing Joshua and Caleb to go in and possess the land, and certainly not believing when God told them to go in and possess the land, Israel the fate was for them to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. And so what I've said in the past, Israel, the children of Israel, the Jewish people, were no way perfect at all times. As a matter of fact, we read it in the Bible that they again and again disobeyed God. And so we see they certainly weren't perfect. And as I've said in the past, Jewish people, although we may be called the chosen people, and probably at another video I'll address this, maybe during a midweek portion, midweek video, not corresponding necessarily with the Torah portion, but maybe I'll just address this one of these next few weeks. The Jewish people, we are not perfect. We are the chosen people because God chose us. Why did he choose us? We weren't better than everyone. We weren't sinless. We weren't even more obedient. But God created the Jewish people. He didn't choose the Jewish people. He created the Jewish people out of the nations through Abraham and Sarah. Why did he choose us? Because he chose us. It was his choice to do. And so we need to keep this in mind. We're not better than everyone else, certainly. But we are known as the chosen people. God chose us to do something very special in his creation process and in his process of salvation. And so Korach and his followers were outright rebellious against the leadership. And when they were rebellious against Moses and Aaron, they were automatically being rebellious against God. And so because of their rebellion, now we know that there were 250 men that immediately followed Korach in his rebellion. And then after that, there were 14,700, according to the Bible, that followed Korach and those initial 250 followers. And so what happened was the 250 supernaturally were burned up. God brought down fire and burned them up and killed them. And then supernaturally, he had the earth open up, and Korach and his family and the 14,700 people were swallowed up into the earth and were killed. We need to understand it was God himself that did this because of their disobedience, not just to the leadership, but to God himself. And so we see the rebellion. Now we know with the rebellion, there had to be a lot of murmuring. We know that the people had to be talking amongst themselves and talking bad against the leadership. Well, it wasn't enough that all of these thousands of people were killed because of their disobedience to the leadership and to God. The Bible says the very next day, the people rebelled against Moses and Aaron once again. Can you imagine that? They saw what God would do, and it didn't matter. The very next day, they rebelled, they murmured, they protested against Moses and especially against Aaron. And so there was a test that God would show who the true leader of the Jewish people should be. And they were directed that each head of the tribes would bring his rod, his staff, and lay it before the Lord. And whoever's staff belonged to the true leader that God had called, something miraculous would happen. And would be something miraculous that would really be impossible. And so what happened was the staff, the rod, that was a piece of wood, but dried out, not a fresh piece of wood, but an old dried out piece of wood that was used as a staff or a rod, blossomed with almond leaves and buds. And so the miraculous budding of Aaron's rod showed the people that it was Aaron that was called by God himself to lead the people and to be the high priest. And traditionally, according to the book of Hebrews tells us that when the Ark of the Covenant is once again discovered, that they will find contained inside the Ark would be the budding rod of Aaron, would be the 10 Commandments on stone from Moses, and would be the golden pot that contains the manna that fed the children of Israel all throughout the 40 years of the wilderness. So now let's go to our tie-in this morning, or this afternoon, or this evening, whenever you're watching this YouTube. Yeshua told us that there are two ways that a leader should act. So there were two lessons that Yeshua taught the people about a good leader of the people. Yeshua, number one, said that the leader should be a servant to the people, not a dictator, but truly would serve the people. And number two, that a true leader, that a good leader, would be a godly leader. And Yeshua said that a good leader should look to God and Messiah as examples on how to lead the people. And Yeshua actually said, just as the Son of Man didn't come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So Yeshua was the ultimate leader. He was such a good leader and such a good servant that he was willing to give his life, as he said, as a ransom. What does that mean? He paid our debt because sin leads to death. And he stepped up and was willing to die for the sins of his people. Rebellion and murmuring, there's a lot going on today. Don't be a part of that. See who your true leaders are. I just want to say one thing before we leave. You know, a lot of you that are listening know that I was the rabbi at Kol Mashiach for 30 years and before I sort of handed off the leadership. And so when I passed on the baton, I looked back and I saw that there were 30 years where there was a lot of murmuring and rebellion that was going on at the congregation throughout the years. Fortunately, not a lot, but just enough. Every leader of every church and synagogue has experienced it. And so in today's day, it's very important to stay away from the murmuring, to stay away from the rebellion. See who your leaderships are. See if they're following what their God and Messiah should be doing. Especially in today's world, it's very, very important. So that's my word for this week. If you're watching on YouTube, please share this. You can share it with friends and family. You can subscribe to the channel. This YouTube channel is Rabbi on the Fly. And until next week, shalom, shalom. This is Rabbi Allen.